Hey guys, today we're going to be installing a flat trigger on my EAA Witness Elite. I got this from Henning, HenningShootsGuns.com. It's a flat trigger kit that's going to replace the stock trigger. It's got a bunch of improvements, so we'll go over that when I get this trigger pulled out. It has a lot tighter fit, and it should make the whole trigger shoot better. It also came with a huge pack of all these different springs, weights that you can use to adjust and make lighter, heavier trigger pull. One of the reasons that this trigger is going to be so much better is it's built to a lot higher tolerances in the factory, so it's going to feel a lot tighter and be a lot smoother in there. I don't know if you can see, but this one has like a tiny bit of side slop, and the new trigger will not. It'll be pretty nice once I get it all in there, and I'll go over how to install it in this video here. Alright guys, we'll take a minute here to talk about just the kit itself. I ordered the professional kit, but unfortunately he was out of the replacement trigger bar plungers, so that's going to be coming soon. I guess he's going to remake a newer model because the other one required quite a bit of fitting. But for now, he sent me the trigger and all the springs that go with it. It comes with two of these trigger. This is like the trigger pin. It's replaced with a screwable, so it's easier and quicker to remove than the stock has a steel roll pin, which is not, since it's rolled steel, it's not as like fully round as a pin, and this one's a little bit larger too, so it has a tighter fit. So this screws on. This will go through and screw on, so it'll make it easier to remove the trigger to tune it. It's got a larger flathead screw here to adjust the pre-travel, and it has one in here for over travel, so you'll be able to do full adjustments on that with a larger contact. This will have a larger contact than the stock, and I'll show you guys the difference between the two once I get my trigger pulled out. And then it's got a whole range of trigger return springs, and then the trigger plunger spring sets, so you get a huge variety of trigger weights and trigger springs and plunger springs, so you can really mix and match till you get like the perfect trigger pull for you. So once I get this all installed, it'll be pretty nice. Just looking at the part, it's like really machine finish nice. It's not rough anywhere on the edges. It's high quality, so this should be a nice addition to the gun. Okay guys, first thing you want to do is go ahead and field strip your gun, just like you normally would if you're cleaning it. Line up the witness holes, take the side stop out. Then you're going to want to remove the sear housing. If you guys don't know how to do that, check out my other video on how to remove the hammer and sear housing. It's pretty easy. Probably be easier if I had a flathead screwdriver, but I can't find one, so I'm just using this knife for right now. Go ahead and remove your sear housing, and then we're going to go ahead and drive out the pin that holds the trigger in. Trigger pin. I don't know if you have a block or not, but they're kind of handy, so it could be worth picking one up. They're not very expensive. And then these self-centering punches are pretty great too. Center right in the hole. Makes it easy to drive stuff out so they don't slip. And it all just comes out like that. Once you guys got your trigger bar and trigger out, go ahead and wipe it off, clean off some of that oil, and then there's one more pin you guys are going to have to remove to get the trigger off the trigger bar, and that is going to be the one that is pivoting on. See if we can find a good way to line this up. But this one right here, you're just going to drive that out like you would the others. And there you go. Trigger separated from the trigger bar. This roll pin you're actually going to want to save because we're going to use that on the new trigger. And I guess you're supposed to trim it down a bit, so you're going to want to save this one to use on the new trigger. A quick comparison of the stock trigger here with the new Henning flat trigger. As you can see, the stock trigger is curved. It's not as machined as nice quality, but you can see here the adjustment screws for pre-travel and over-travel, how they're just tiny little screw heads basically that are making contact. But with the Henning trigger, you have a very large flat screw here, and then you have this one which is moved. You can adjust this one from inside the gun, but you cannot adjust this one while the trigger's in. But with the new way that the pin works, and it's removable with a screw, it's going to be real easy to take the trigger out. If you want to adjust this, you're not going to have to pound a roll pin out every time you want to adjust your trigger. You just unscrew it, pull that, and the whole thing's going to come out, which is going to make it a lot easier to switch springs. Also, the stock trigger has a trigger return spring like this that goes through the roll pin and holds it like that. It's a lot different. The Henning system's a lot easier. It's going to be to put in. You have the springs here, and it goes up inside like that, and then it holds up in there, so that's going to be a lot easier to work with. These roll pin ones are always a pain in the butt to get back in because you got to jimmy it in there and then get your pin through. And the Henning trigger is just it's going to be a lot better. It's going to be more reliable. It's going to be more consistent because it's got the larger lands on the return screw and stuff, so it's just a lot better trigger system. So let's go ahead and finish putting that in. Also going to polish up the stock plunger, so I'm actually going to pull that out right now too. Right now it's just black. There's like painting on it, but you can see it's silver where it's making contact with the trigger bar. So I'm going to take this out, polish it up to a mirror finish with the Dremel to just make it that much smoother. Normally this would be replaced with his Hewing roller bar, which actually has a roller wheel there, which makes it even more smooth and stuff, but he's all out of those right now, and he's designing a new style, so I'm just going to do the best of what we got with the stock. What you're going to want to do is just pull this out, but make sure right here there's a little hole on your magazine release. You're going to want to make sure you put your finger over that hole while you pull this out. Otherwise there's a little detent in there that could pop out. So you want to make sure you don't lose that. So go ahead and put your finger over that and just take some needle nose and pull the plunger out like that. And then your magazine release is going to come out too. Real quick here, I just wanted to show you that detent that's in there. You don't want to lose this guy right here. If you lose that, this is not going to work right. So you make sure you put your finger over the hole when you're taking it out, because you don't want to lose this spring. And you definitely don't want to lose that little detent, otherwise you're going to have to wait on putting your gun back together. But it just goes back in the hole like that, pointy end in first. Alright guys, I just wanted to show you this real quick. This is a trigger bar. This is where the plunger makes contact. You can see the silver part that's worn. That's where the trigger bar plunger is making contact with the trigger bar. I'm going to polish that whole area smooth, so there'll be no more black and there'll be a mirror finish. I'm going to do that with the Dremel, but you just want to make sure you smooth it out. You can see the top of the stock plunger, and you can see the worn part there where it's touching the trigger bar. We're going to go ahead and smooth the whole top of that thing, mirror finish too, with a Dremel. I'm just showing you the contact points, and you just go ahead and polish that up with some metal polish and like a felt head on your Dremel tool, and that should smooth out the action a lot. Here guys, you can see after I hit it with the Dremel and polish it up nice and shiny, both those contacts are going to be real smooth and slide a lot nicer than how it was now that they're polished. Guys, now what you're going to do, there's a tiny little pin in here that holds this on. If you want to replace this spring in here, the trigger plunger spring, with one of Henning's springs, you're going to have to get that pin out. I don't know if you can see it there. It's kind of tricky because you got to push this thing down, and then you can see it right there. See if I have a small enough punch to get that out. push it out, whole thing comes off just like that. To make our trigger even smoother, what we can do is try and polish this right here, this rod part. We can polish that up, and then it'll just make it smoother for the other portion to ride on. So we'll just take some high grit sandpaper and give that a smooth over. Maybe it doesn't have to be mirror finish, but just smooth it out with some high grit sandpaper. Try the 18-pound plunger spring and see how that works. You can see the stock on the right, the 18-pound on the left. It's quite a bit thinner. So we'll see. We're going to try that one first and see if that can give us a reliable trigger. I'll go ahead and put that back on the plunger. New 18-pound plunger spring on there, and I pushed it down and I stuck a punch through the hole where the pin goes, and I'll just use that to hold it through while I push the pin through. It'll make it a little easier to put the pin back in on the plunger. Now you guys are going to want to put the plunger back in that we have the new spring on it. You're going to go ahead and put your magazine release back in there. There's that little hole on the other side. Make sure that your spring and D-tie are in there correctly. Put your plunger in that little hole on the magazine release. Go ahead and push that in so the spring goes all the way in with the detent. You can kind of look through the top and see if it's in the right spot, but once you get it all the way in, just hold your magazine, hold it like that. Go ahead and stick your return plunger in there, and then you can release pull the pin out, and then it will catch on and your magazine release will be back to normal. We got that in there. We're going to want to go ahead and reattach the trigger bar to the new trigger. Just goes on like that. You want to make sure that the side you polished is facing down towards the trigger, and then you're just going to go ahead and put the original stock pin, trigger pin, back in there, and you just go ahead and pound that through. As you can see, we went and got that installed. As you can see, there's just a teeny little bit of overhang from the stock pin because it's a little bit longer. You could trim or polish that off if you want, or you could just leave it. I think I'm going to leave it because it's just a teeny little bit. So once you got that on, we can go ahead and stick this in the gun and start to get our pre-travel and over-travel screws adjusted. Alright, after you get the trigger back on, you're going to want to do some test fits so you can adjust the pre-travel and over-travel screws. I just had to run to the hardware store because these adjustment screws are very small. The smallest Allen I had was a 1.5. This is 1.5 millimeter. This is too big to fit in there. I got a 1.3, and that seems to fit in there pretty good, or enough to adjust them both at least. So you're going to want to go ahead and fit your trigger in there with your spring, and so you can do some test fittings, so you can adjust these screws to where your trigger will safely work and you have the best pre-travel and over-travel adjustments. And test fit the trigger in. Stick your trigger bar in and your trigger. Line that up. Push your trigger down. So you can line that hole up. Go ahead and insert the trigger bar screw. So it'll be a little easier if I turn it like this. So you go ahead and get that in there, then you can go ahead, you got our trigger, then you can start to adjust your adjustments. You might want to put the sear in real quick, so that way you can make sure that your trigger is resetting properly every time. You don't have to fully install the sear, but just get it in there and then stick the safety in to hold it. Make sure when you're testing your trigger that you always test it with a slide on too. If you look right now, see, it works. And it seems like it's perfect, but we put the slide on. Put the slide on, cycle it, and now it doesn't work. That means usually that means your pre-travel, this big one, has to be adjusted less. So you always want to make sure when you're testing your trigger and you're testing your adjustments that it works when you just rack the slide normally, because the trigger doesn't pull now. After you've taken it in and out and adjusted the screws a few times to make sure that the trigger works every time you pull the slide back, you should have a real consistent every time. You should be able to pull the trigger and it should go. So I think I got it locked in all good, and now you're pretty much done. You just have to reassemble your gun and everything the way that you normally would. I mean, once you got it set with the Loctite on there, you're pretty much, everything's all set. All you have to do now is just attach the bolt part that goes right here, and I'd probably put some Loctite on there too. Loctite blue would probably work the best, so you wouldn't have a hard time getting that off. It's kind of beveled on one side, so I put the bevel side down, kind of go with the housing there. But after that, you should be pretty much all done. You got your new flat trigger. It works great. Remember how on the stock trigger there was that wobble side to side? I don't know if you guys can see, but this has zero wobble. I cannot move that side to side at all. The trigger feels great in my hand. It's perfect. It's in the perfect location. You know, no matter how high or low you are on the trigger, it's always going to be the same, straight back. This is just a great trigger. It's way lighter than what it was stock. The trigger pull, it feels a lot smoother after we polished up the trigger bar plunger and the trigger bar in those two locations. This is just great. I cannot wait to go to the range and give this a shoot. My video, guys, on how to install the Henning flat trigger system. It looks like it works great. If you can just see the trigger pull, I mean, it's virtually nothing now. It's a lot lighter than the stock. It feels a lot nicer than the stock. No more side wobble. It's just great. A little expensive, but I think it's worth it. This is going to be really fun to shoot, and I hope to use this gun in ESP division of IDPA. I think it'll be a great performer. With this, it's going to work even better. When he gets the hewing roller bars remade, I'm probably going to add that in, and that should make the trigger even smoother than it already is. But right now, I mean, it's just fantastic. I cannot be more pleased with the fit and finish of the trigger. It's just great, and thank you for watching.